Welcome back to Football Frenzy. We move to the Buckeye State, where we had a marquee matchup in Reedsville with two teams each looking for win number 4 on the season.
Yeah, and after a 2-week break, the Eastern Eagles were back on the field, and they welcomed in the Waterford Wildcats. Eagles were hoping for a second straight win, while the Wildcats tried to halt a 2-game losing streak. Let's go out to Reedsville and see how it all went down.
And we pick up action in the first quarter as Eastern quarterback Braxton Yonker fakes the handoff, fires a pass, but is intercepted by Weston Fairchild, who hits the turbo boost and makes a few defenders miss before getting into the end zone. 7-0 Wildcats early. Now into the second. It's Wildcats quarterback Hayden Jones rolling out of the pocket and finding his man Trevin Zimmer, who walks in untouched on 4th and goal to extend the Waterford lead to 14-0. Eastern, though, would respond quickly. Ethan Edwards powers his way in at the goal line to cut the deficit to 14-7. And after an onside kick recovery, it's the Eagles again as Yonker connects with Parker Durst as he breaks a few tackles, tiptoes the sidelines, and dives to the goal line for the touchdown to make it a 14-13 game into halftime. Third quarter now, Zimmer taking the handoff from Jones will get into the end zone with ease to extend Waterford's lead to 21-13. Just before the end of the third, it's Waterford again cashing in as Jones keeps it himself and dives forward for the touchdown to give the Wildcats a 28-13 lead, and Waterford will go on to win by that score, 28-13.
Very nice. Well, turning over to Beverly as Fort Fry hosts Caldwell. On the first play of the Cadets' first drive, Cadets running back Tice Beardsley would rush up the field, but the ball would be stripped and picked up off the ground by Gavin Leake. Disaster. Redskins scoop it and score it, make it 7-0.
Wow.
Yeah, later on, here we go. Cadets would respond with help from Beardsley and the junior route to get the ball into the end zone, or the red zone, excuse me. That would help set up the field goal for kicker Titan Waller, a 35-yarder to help the Cadets make it a 5-point game in the first half.
Nice kick.
Yeah, the Cadets would find some success from their rushing attack here, as this time it would be the junior Sam Bricker finding some space up the middle for Fort Fry's first touchdown of the evening.
Nice. Great run.
With this 15-yard run, making the score 10-7 at the half. Cadets continue the momentum to score another 21 unanswered points as Fort Fry would find the win column for the 4th time this season with a final of 31-7.
Great win for Fort Fry off the Frontier for the first Battle of the Bridge matchup between St. Mary's and Frontier since 2018. Halfway through the first quarter, St. Mary's QB Jeremiah DeMoss rolls to his left, finds Eli Wilson on the easy one-read play downfield, and Wilson is gone for the 72-yard touchdown. What a play there.
Yeah, early.
Now, the option game was working well to start for the Blue Devils. St. Mary's, though, however, would fail the extra point attempt. Beginning of the second quarter, Aiden Bills with a backwards forward pass into the end zone for a safety for the Blue Devils. You don't see that every day.
That is crazy, yeah.
St. Mary's up 8-0, and now an interception. Bills on the defensive side with the big pick for the Cougars there. But on the very next play, the snap cannot be handled. Blue Devils come up with the fumble recovery. Just a lot of wild stuff here.
Fingers and new metamorphosis.
Oh, and another interception here. Jeremiah DeMoss is intercepted. 3 turnovers on 3 combined possessions. Now 28 seconds left in the half. Aiden Bills finds Austin Kephart for the 67-yard touchdown. Finally, not a turnover there. We love to see that. St. Mary's, though, up 8-6 at halftime. Blue Devils would come away with a 37-14 win over Frontier. Griffin.
Man, that was a wild one. Well, let's go back to the Mountain State, where Ripley made the long trip out to Nitro. Chris Radcliffe gets the handoff, and he's going to fight his way to get over the goal line for the touchdown. That makes it 7-0. Nitro cheerleaders are loving it. Then Take Porter makes a cut, then another cut, and that gives him plenty of room to work with. He is down the sideline and gone. 70-yard touchdown run. That'll extend the lead to 14-0. Nitro in the lead. Student section loving it too.
Let's go.
Ian Duffy can throw it as well as he puts it perfectly in the back corner of the end zone where Malachi Thompson makes the leaping grab. It's now 21-zip. Nitro strike up the band. Chris Radcliffe gets the handoff and breaks the tackle at the line, keeps his balance, and splits the blockers and defenders. He's gone on a 50-yard touchdown run, make it 28-0 Nitro, racking up some yards. The Wildcats go on to win this one over Ripley, 48-6.
Well, in other high school football scores, the Marietta Tigers are still searching for their first win as they fell to Circleville 42-21. The Morgan Raiders defeated West Muskingum at home 42-28. The Work County Tigers were blown out by Wahama 55-6 the final in that game. Well, don't go anywhere. There is still more to come on Football Frenzy,
including a preview of 2 more games kicking off this weekend in Ohio.